welcome back to Our Redeemed Life. And again, like, subscribe, share this video if you enjoy it and you think it'll be a blessing to somebody. Today we're talking about the choice to school your children at home. I have been asked over the years 1,000 or more times why I started homeschooling and was that always my life plan? So today I'm going to go over that in this video, and hopefully it'll give you some encouragement. Maybe you have a son or daughter or family member, friend, neighbor that is thinking about choosing to school their children at home, and I hope this is a blessing. I'm actually going to be interviewing some other mamas, and we are going to be talking about different ways to homeschool, because especially when I started, I thought there was one way and that was the only way, and it just set me up for some disappointments and some frustrations until I learned to get into my own groove and do it the way I needed to do it. So first and foremost, I had never heard of homeschooling, was not on my radar. I went to a private school growing up. That's what my mom worked so hard to be able to send us to. And then when I had kids, I mean, I don't know, you just follow along with what everybody's doing. You don't question. I had my kids in private school too the first few years, and I really didn't necessarily question. I was involved as far as I would go to parties and I would always go on field trips and things like that. Because I wanted to be there to experience that with my kids. But as far as the curriculum that they taught, I do remember objecting to some things, and I do remember my kids coming home, and especially my older daughter, she would be like, I need help with math, and I would show her the way that I knew how to do math, and she would break down crying that she was going to get in trouble because that wasn't the way to do it, even though the answer was correct, because I showed her a different way. And I didn't really understand that, and it was just like these battles that we would have over math, especially with her, because it wasn't the correct way to do it, and she would be fearful of getting in trouble by her teachers. And so that was confusing to me. It didn't really send off too many red flags other than just frustration, like, gosh, I wish I could help her, but I mean, the answer is correct. I don't understand why it matters how we get to the answer. But so a couple of years go by, and my son, who was going into 6th grade, he was in 5th grade at the time, and that fall he would have been going into 6th grade, asked me, he came home one day and he asked me to homeschool him. Now, at that point, I had only met one person that homeschooled. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't ask her about it. I wasn't curious. I was kind of like all the other moms that were like, hey, the kids are in school. I get some free time, and a little bit of free time anyway. I was a single parent at that point. I had been widowed twice, so I had 5 kids under the age of 10. And so to have just like even a little bit of a break sounded good, even though I wanted to be with my kids. So I genuinely loved being a mom. I loved all my children, and I wanted to be with them. The one beef I do remember having with school was that my kids were in school all day from 7:30 till 4, by the time they got home, and then they would have homework for hours and hours, and they weren't older, they weren't high school, they weren't even in middle school yet, and it would be hours and hours of homework. And I just remember saying to my kids, like, hey, you're my kids. Our whole day does not have to be consumed with school. Like, this isn't fair. You're gone all day. I want to see you. I want you to have a good bedtime. I want you to have a good dinner with us, with the family, and not have to do this. They would have to work on projects sometimes with other kids from their class on the weekends. I hated that because I'm like, the weekend is mine. I get you for the weekend. It's not it's not ours to share with the school. This isn't fair. So those are kind of some of the things that I do remember just being angst about. But so my son was about to go into 6th grade, and he came home one day in the late spring, and he was like, Mom, could you please homeschool me? It's just brutal at school. And I was like, I'm not smart enough to homeschool you. You're crazy. I don't even know what that is. I don't know what it looks like. I just have no idea. And he's like, please, Mom. You know, he was kind of relentless. Said, please, Mom. I don't want to go into middle school. It's just the pressure at school, is how he described it, was intense. And he was always kind of getting in trouble, not like calling the principal all the time, but just for not being able to sit still. And he would talk a lot. So the teacher would be like, no matter where I move him, he like talks to everyone. He just talks and talks and talks. So I had a friend who I had just met, and she actually homeschooled, and I kind of never paid attention to that, but I had said to her kind of jokingly, I'm like, yeah, my son wants me to homeschool. That's crazy. I was not a great student, so you know, C average was my best, and I really didn't understand a lot of things in school. It just like things, I'm an out of the box thinker, and things that they kind of made me cram into a specific box didn't really make sense to me, and so I did not feel like I was a good candidate for homeschooling. Like, I didn't understand school, so how am I going to teach my own kids? And she was like, I really think you need to pray about it, because it is, you know, this could be really good, especially if your son, who's going into 6th grade at that age, is asking for it. And I was like, whatever, you know, not really listening. And then she brought up the fact that early June of that spring, there was going to be a homeschool conference, and that I should go to it. And I was like, okay, I'll just entertain the idea. I'm not going to do this, but I'll entertain the idea, and I'll go to the homeschool conference with you. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll just go and kind of see what this is all about. And the conference was in Illinois. It was 3 days long. I literally cried at the thought of it. When I walked in, there was so many curriculums to pick up from, and there was so many classes to take, and so many topics, and I was so overwhelmed. I literally cried my eyes out the first day, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm not saying I'm gonna homeschool. I don't know anything about this, and this is all so overwhelming to me. Being a single mom, I just can't even imagine. And so I just stuck it out. I went through that whole conference, and I came out changed. People changed. Just the topics of each of the classes that they talked about how your children learn, about whether they're kinesthetic, like tactile, like hands-on. My son never wanted to be inside. He always wanted to be outside. He always wanted to be moving. He always wanted to be building. He would get a brand new bike, and he would take it apart that afternoon and rebuild it. He would take a toaster and rebuild it. He was just always doing that kind of stuff, and it would frustrate me because I didn't understand what he was doing. But then when I went to this class at this homeschool conference about how our children are all individual, created by God, just so unique, and how they're all designed differently. All of our brains are different. I wasn't a very good student, and there are people that are like brainiacs and like are just so good at academics and numbers and, you know, science and all that kind of stuff. And so it just opened my world up, and I was like, wow, you know, maybe, you know, my son doesn't like to sit still in a box. Like, he's just wants to build and create, and he thinks so critically, and he just observes so well. And so I just started noticing things, like just kind of opened my mind up to just watch your kids and to see how they learn and to see what they're good at. I had never thought about that before. I mean, yes, you see your kids are good at something, but this kind of opened it up even further. And I was like, wow, this is pretty intense. This is different. I've never thought about this before. And so that started my journey. I had 2 smaller children at home at that time. The rest were in school. And so I just took him out. And the school at the time, I don't know that they do it now, the school at the time was like, you can have all of our books, you can use them for free, I'll give you the teacher's manuals. And I was like, I don't really want your books. I'm gonna get my own books and kind of just figure this out. And it just was the start of something so beautiful, so beautiful. that, and I'm not saying it was always beautiful, and it wasn't, it was hard, and it was frustrating, and I would cry, and all the emotions. Like, this is not a picture perfect journey, right? But just having your eyes open to what your kids are learning, how they learn. That first year with my son, I immediately, like that first fall day, I put him at a desk, or I put him at the kitchen table and put pencils in front of him and paper. I was kind of like, just like, okay, well, this is what school looks like. And he just couldn't sit still. And I was, you know, frustrated and yelling at him and telling him to sit back down and do his work and don't move and this and that. And I was telling my friend this, that homeschooled, I was like, oh, he just can't sit still, and he wants to move, and he wants to go outside and chop wood, and oh my gosh, he just has all these things going through his head. And she's like, don't, you took him out of school to get him out of school, so don't duplicate school when you get him home. Don't do that. Do it the way he needs it. And so that was like, okay, but you know, is he gonna learn? Am I gonna mess him up? Is he gonna be screwed up? Is he gonna ever get a job? Will he ever get married? Will he ever be able to support anybody? All those things were constantly running through my head. But you know what? She was wise. She was doing a good job. And I was like, okay, well, so I would take him to the park. This kid was just going into 6th grade, and I would take him to the park, and I would let his little sisters play, and I would like have him read his science or reading or whatever subject we were doing. And he just had this amazing ability to just really comprehend things. You know, he would just be playing around in the sand with his little sisters, and I would be reading to him. I'm like, okay, what did I say? And he would, you know, relay back to me just what I said. And I was like, wow, he's really listening. All these years I thought he wasn't listening, and he would get in trouble for not listening. But he was very, very intuitive, very great at comprehension. And just that, taking him out of the house and taking him away from a table. And so after that, like, he would start his day during the winters. He would start his day by going outside and picking up and gathering wood for a fire. And the kids would just like gather around. He loved to sit by the fireplace, and he would sit by the fireplace and read. So we got rid of the school has to be at a desk. Like sometimes, you know, if you're writing, we did math and stuff, we would sit at the table. But like if they were reading, if they were, you know, just building or something like that, we just did it differently. And it was so beautiful that I didn't feel like we had to be in this box that everybody tries to put you in and that school tries to put you in. And he thrived. He would notice things, he would build things, he would do things that I was like, gosh, you know, his brain's always working, and he's learning, and he's enjoying it, and he's thriving because he's not in this like shoved in box environment that he feels so restrained in. Now, unschooling is different. I didn't unschool. I definitely homeschooled. But unschooling is a little different, and that's where you kind of let the child lead everything. I didn't do that, but I really just watched and observed how each of my kids were. Some of my kids were more studious and were really great academically and wanted to sit at the table and wanted to do it that way. And that was great for them. And some of them weren't. Some of them were very tactile and just needed to observe outside. We would go for walks. We would go for field trips. You know, one time we just drove to Canada because we could. And once you know, that after that first year, I took the other kids out of school, and I was like, this is beautiful. We have so much freedom. Freedom to choose, and freedom to just enjoy, and freedom to learn about each other. And my biggest fear bringing them home was that they would fight more, because they already fought a lot before that. And I thought, gosh, this is going to be a bloodbath every day, and I'm going to pull my hair out, and I'm not going to want to do this anymore. But what I really found, what God was so faithful, what I really found was that when I brought them all home, they actually got along better. Now, they still fought. They still got on each other's nerves. They still picked on each other. They still teased each other. They did all the normal, you know, kid stuff, but it was normal stuff. It wasn't I thought it was going to be 1,000 times worse having them all home every day. People would say that, like, oh my gosh, your kids are going to kill each other. They're never around other kids. I'm like, well, they are, because they're in sports. We had sports after school like everybody else. We did sports. And they had friend groups. We got together with other homeschool groups. We did field trips with other homeschool kids. So that socialization thing is not a thing. All my kids can speak to adults. Even when they were 2, 3 years old, they would look an adult in the eye. They would speak to them clearly. They would greet them. They had respect for them. They learned respect for the elderly because they were home with me and I could teach them that. Those were things that we could focus on, and they weren't following around 25 other kids that were their own age doing it's like a fool, following around a room of fools, you know. So it was just the most beautiful start to a journey that I am just so grateful for. And there wasn't a day, not a day, that I regretted it. Not one day did I want to send them back. Now there was days where I said, done, I'm done. Go play outside. I can't handle you anymore. I am tired. I'm, especially as a single parent, I worked part-time. And so there was days where I was done and that I could not handle being a mom anymore. And I would take a mom break, but lock myself in a closet or go outside and take a walk by myself. But not one time did I ever regret taking them out of school. Not one time. And my 2 younger kids never went into a brick and mortar school. And they were better for it because back then, like, this is 2023 and we're seeing all the mess that's in schools right now, right? Well, back then at these homeschool conferences, they were talking about a lot of the stuff that's going on now. And they said, this is coming. And we just couldn't even believe that it would ever come. Like, you're crazy that they would be teaching kids this, or that they would be instituting this, or that they would allow this in a school. Like, we just couldn't even imagine that that was possible, but now we're here. So they knew back then, they knew that this is where the world was heading, this is where society was heading, and I just was so enjoying watching my kids be the people that God made them to be. Like, just, it's so beautiful when you let them walk in the way that they were designed. And all of them were very different. All of them had very different struggles. All of them had very different gifts. All of them, some enjoyed it, some, all of them, I think at one point, except for maybe my son, asked to go to school at some point. And I was like, we're just not doing that. I didn't give them a choice. They're kids. They didn't have a choice. My middle daughter, I let her go to high school for 2 years because we had a loss. Her older sister passed away. And so that's another video on grief and loss of a child. And so I did let her go back to high school. It was very hard for me to allow her to do that, to trust to do that. And she actually came back her senior year on her own. She wanted to come back home and finish her senior year out at home, because the stuff in school that she saw herself was just not what she wanted. So the rest of the time, I didn't give them a choice. The 2 younger kids never had a choice to go and try it out. I was like, this is not what's for you. You have tons of friends, more friends than most kids that are in school ever have. Lots of opportunities, music and sports and theater, and they were in it all. So just because you're homeschooled doesn't mean you just sit at home. Like, we were on the go all the time. And so that's a choice. Like, that was my choice, to allow them to do those things and let them do those things. Some parents don't, and some parents do, and that's all with what works for your family, and that's the beautiful thing. So we are going to do more videos on this, and the next one I think is going to be on your why. Because you know what? To withstand, I think I homeschooled for 17 years. To go that long, you have to have a why. To be successful in business, you have to have a why. To have a successful marriage, you have to have a why. Why am I doing this? And your why has to be stronger than anything else, because when the forces come against you, I had family, friends say, I had family say, you're going to ruin your kids by homeschooling them. You're going to ruin them. well, I am glad to sit here and say all my kids are perfectly normal, healthy, well-educated, productive people of society that are a blessing to society, not a menace. And that's by God's grace, actually, not just on my part. But I had a strong why. I was like, you know what? I want them to really thrive in the way that God designed them. I don't want anything to get in the way of that. And I started to open my eyes up to what was going on in the schools and how restrictive it was, mostly academically, how restrictive it was. In 8th grade, my son took a welding class at our local college, like our local community college. 8th grade, he would go to a night class and take welding. Most 8th graders don't get that opportunity, but that was something he was really interested in. I was like, hey, it's available, let's do it. My kids all worked really early. They worked from 13, 14 years old, and they had to work. I didn't give them their phones. They didn't have phones till they were driving. They didn't get free car insurance. They didn't get a free car. They had to pay. They couldn't drive until they could pay for car insurance and a car. That makes productive adults. And that was my end goal. No matter how hard homeschooling got, no matter how tired I was, my why was huge, and it was strong, and no one was going to take it away from me. And no weapons of words from any negative person was going to destroy what I felt like I was building into. I was building into their health and their teaching them how to take care of their bodies, and teaching them how to make good decisions, and teaching them how to be a good friend, how to be a respectful adult, how to be kind to the elderly, how to just be a productive, hardworking, good worker, just so that your boss loves you. Like, you show up, you do what you're supposed to do. Those are all way more important than algebra problems and trigonometry, all those kind of things. I was like, gotta remember that stuff. And you know, those are all the important things. Balancing your checkbook, learning how to budget, all that kind of stuff. So those will be videos coming up on your why, on grief and loss of a child, on different interviews with different moms. We're going to have someone who speaks to homeschooling with a child with disabilities, homeschooling with toddlers, homeschooling with a big family, homeschooling with a little family. And I have a lot of homeschool experience with being a single mom. And that was hard. It was lots of sacrifices, and I just made it work. So stay tuned, like and share this video. Please subscribe to our channel, and I hope this blesses you today. Have a great day.